Some conflicts there is no resolution to. So I talk to people about that all the time. There is no resolution, but you can solve it. You can figure out whatever's going to happen, however it's going to be, whatever the conflict is. And there's a type of solution that comes, whether that solution includes a resolution piece to it or I need to walk away. The true healing comes from you when what you've done to me or what you think about me no longer impacts me on my day-to-day. When I talk about the different stages, and we talk about there's attacking, evading, informing, opening, uniting. Those are the 5 different ways individuals deal with conflict. There's the attackers, either the aggressive attackers or the passive-aggressive attackers. There's the evaders. And then when I train people, I want you to live in the IOU. Inform, open, and unite. And we'll talk about that in a second. But most of us who have never been trained live in the A and the E. And what's so interesting is so many people say, I'm the evader, I'm not the attacker. And I'm like, bullshit. Everybody's a little bit of everything.
If something standing between you and your happiness, it was for me. I had to face my depression and the constant negative self-talk. Therapy helped me realize I deserve to be happy. That's why this podcast is called I Choose Health, because I made the choice to heal and I want to share that with you. It's Men's Mental Health Awareness Month. 60% of you who are watching this podcast are men. And brothers, it is time to take care of yourself. As a gift to you, we've partnered with BetterHelp as our sponsor to help you start your own healing journey. We all face moments when life feels overwhelming, whether it's stress, anxiety, or just feeling stuck. Talking to someone can make a real difference. And that's where our sponsor BetterHelp comes in. BetterHelp offers professional online therapy that's convenient, affordable, and entirely on your schedule. You can connect with a licensed therapist by video, phone, or even chat, whatever works best for you. Let our sponsor BetterHelp support you on your journey to better mental health. You can get 10% off your first month by going to betterhelp.com/iChooseHealth. That's betterhelp.com/iChooseHealth for 10% off your first month. Take the first step toward feeling better today. All right, guys, welcome back to the I Choose Health podcast. I'm your host, Stefan Lessie, and with me today is an old friend. We have Sara Steinweiss. I'm so glad to have you here. How are you feeling today?
I'm feeling excellent. This is pretty awesome.
So we actually go way back. I actually worked with Sara's mom some time ago. Sara's mom was my client. I loved working with her mom. She was that feisty,
You could say that again.
feisty older lady that was just fun to work with. So I really actually do miss working with her. So that was a lot of fun. But Sara also has quite a resume of her own, and she's doing some really important work. She's really helping kids within this region. Is it more than just kids as well?
So it's basically anybody who'll listen to me now. But what once started with high school students now goes through a variety of adults, kids, and not even in education. It expands through a lot more than that as well.
Right. So, Sara, I know that you've walked so many paths as an educator, community builder, conflict mediator. If you look back at young Sara growing up in Brooklyn or in Bensonhurst, would she have imagined this life for herself?
So, no, I don't think she would have. I think young Sara was very intuitive. She was a problem solver. She was a caregiver from the very beginning with the nature of what went on in my life at a young age. But I don't think young Sara would have known that she would have been the leader that she became and understood so much. She was in a tough spot back then. She was in turmoil. She was in conflict. You know my story. My dad died when I was 5 in front of me and my brothers. So there was turmoil in the house. There was a lot of chaos and conflict around us in the neighborhood, in schools, and my own life. So young Sara, it's so interesting that you asked that because I often think back to her and always think about talking to my 5-year-old self. If I had a chance to have a conversation with her today, what would I tell her? And to sit back and let her know that I was always on the outside looking in, knowing I wanted more, being much older than I was at that age, and always questioning, always wondering why and where could we go better and where could we do better and how could we improve things. Don't think she dared to dream. If, I don't think young Sara would have thought that she would have been running her own company.
Yeah.
Leaving, a job and running her own company and doing things in conflict resolution and being revered in her field in what she does and having people truly listen to her.
Yeah.
Or being able to train people and have people in my life who have become Grammy Award winners or who are out in the world as lawyers and doctors and just have this plethora and this reach of humans that have passed through. So I think she knew somewhere, but I don't think she was able to envision this life for her.
Yeah, that's amazing. And speaking about leaving that job, I know that you left a secure job in the New York City Department of Education, and that's a huge leap. What was going through your heart and mind when you made that decision, and what pulled you toward the unknown?
You're out of your mind. So I was born to be a teacher. That is one thing that I knew. Young Sara knew that. My dad was an orchestral music teacher in Bed-Stuy, and I watched how he impacted his students. So I always had this innate draw to educate. And, when you grow up in New York City and you're going to be a teacher, you're going to be a New York City Department of Education teacher and be a part of things. And I loved teaching. I loved the work that I did in musical theater and with conflict resolution in the school systems. But what I didn't love was I didn't love the system. And there was this constant nag. I don't want to use the word nag, but this draw and feeling that everywhere I went and everybody I spoke to, everybody was in this zombie mode of just on this wheel of not having enough resources, schools not being an environment to produce the beauty that is within young people. And just every time we got something right, they changed it on us. So when I decided to resign from the Department of Education, a lot went on in my school building for a variety of years with myself. I went through some really hard times there. I had harassment cases that I had to be involved in that, took a toll on me. I saw how my colleagues were just not equipped to be educators and quite frankly shouldn't have been educators, many of them. And then there were a bunch of my other colleagues who were amazing and just so drawn out and taken down by this life. Truth be told, Stefan, the reason why I left, which my mother, I don't know if she loves this, but at the time I was 475 pounds. I was working nonstop, running programs everywhere, not living at home. My aunt had just passed away of colon cancer, and my aunt on her deathbed said, "Please find your happiness again." And I came home one day and to my mom to check on her, and she said, "You look the way your father looked every day before he dropped dead, and I can't lose both of you, so figure it out." And I was like, what? And so I decided to do a sabbatical first, to just maybe it was the system, maybe it was this or that. On the sabbatical, I found life. Like there was just more to life out there. And I started talking to other educators, and it wasn't just the school I was in, it was the system. And when I went back, I wasn't happy anymore. And what I was teaching and what I was doing with my students, I felt immoral because the system is broken. And I was tired of complaining. And I said, okay, so within the system, I can't do anything. I have to take a leap.
Dig into that, because that's a heavy word to use, right? Because, you are helping the kids. When you use a word like immoral, did you feel like you knew that what you were doing wasn't helping the kids? Like, was that what you felt?
Yeah. Specifically, so I resigned in 2011. Graduation rates were a big hot ticket item. Not that they're not today, but I watched how we were passing, changing the way kids were graded in certain things. So for instance, I was an English teacher, English Regents. You could not speak English and not write in English, but you can still graduate. And just not being prepared for life. I'm teaching high school. and taking away classes and not preparing our young people and creating situations where some of them were being tasked out and to take their GED because their graduation rate was going to fall. And it was no longer about the individual human, it was numbers. And education should never be a numbers game. Everybody has a magic within them. It's our job as an educator to find that, to figure it out. If you don't know it, find somebody that does. And I was just surrounded by who, I don't want to say gave up, just you're going to work and you're doing it. And you're doing what you have to do with what you have. And we have amazing teachers in this system. The work that our educators are doing is unbelievable with what they don't have to do it with. And it's not educators, it's the system. And I felt that because I was a part of the system and I couldn't do anything about it, or I could only do so much, I needed to leave the system, because for me personally, it wasn't moral. What I signed up for and what I was doing were two very different things. I could no longer be the teacher I wanted to be. There were too many rules and regulations, and the work that was coming down in the core curriculum and the curriculum or the lack of curriculum, and not including high school students in that language, not having ways to work with a student who might not want to go to college or shouldn't be in college, or how do we move kids forward?
Yeah.
How do we make productive citizens of our community? How do we deal with the changing times? I didn't feel like any of that was happening where I was. So yeah, the word immoral came up a lot, because my job as an educator is to prepare you. I can open the doors. You have to walk through, but my job is to prepare you. So if I'm not preparing you and I'm telling you that you're prepared because you got a diploma, I felt immoral. I felt that I was not doing what God has tasked me to do. That was immoral. That became an immoral situation for me.
Yeah.
And looking in the mirror every day, I wasn't happy. I wasn't centered, and I decided that I was going to resign, which I did, not knowing what I was going to do, walking away from pension, medical, I always say, and I ended up working for New York City Councilman. I became his educational liaison. The discrepancy in pay, I went from making almost $100,000 a year because I was teaching a long time and I was doing overtime, to making, I think I went down to $28,000 a year.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Yeah. So, it's scary, but it's something I would do it all again if I had to.
Yeah.
The exact same way.
And that's the thing, I think you had your bigger picture in mind, right? I think there's already that why. You're like, okay, I know why I'm doing this, and I think I'm okay with stepping away. I'm pretty sure there were a lot of fears. You're like, okay, is this what I really want to do?
A lot of fears. Because, you're walking away from stability. I still had student loans, my master's, had to have 2 master's degrees, and that's the other thing in our city, and you have to have 2 master's degrees. And not that I think you shouldn't, but there's no help in that. So yeah, walking away, the fears were enormous, but I read a book at the time called Trust by Ivana Van Vliet. I hope I pronounced, I hope I pronounced the name right. And she said, if you're making a decision and a little bit of pee isn't coming down your leg, you're not making the right decision. So I was making the right decision because I was scared shitless.
Now, I know you spoke about what your aunt was saying to you on her deathbed, and we know that conflict resolution is about helping others find peace. But how have you personally found peace when facing conflict in your own life?
It's a great question. How have I found peace? So first of all, I think people need to understand conflict. I live, eat, and breathe conflict. It's what I do. It's a constant work in progress. It is not, there isn't just, okay, there's this cookie cutter way to get through the conflict and there you are and now you have peace. I think it's more about finding peace within yourself to accept where you are on this journey. So one of the quotes that I say all the time is, you may not be exactly where you want to be, but you're exactly where you're supposed to be. So trust the process. So for me, that peace comes from really acknowledging that this is necessary. Conflict is necessary for life. Adversity is necessary for success. We need to have hard times to figure that out. So in accepting that and knowing that this too shall pass. And I know that's easier said than done, but a lot of the times when I'm training and I'm doing workshops for kids or adults alike, I say, you've survived 100% of the worst days of your life. You know how I know that? You showed up today. And you might not be showing up in the way you want to show up, but you showed up. And I think people forget to give themselves the credit for walking the walk. Even if they're not walking it the way they want to or how they want it resolved in that moment, bringing yourself back to centering yourself, to meeting yourself where you are. I'm very big in my work that I meet people where they are. It is not my job to make you meet me where I am. It's my job to meet you where you are. So for me, the peace comes from myself with my own conflict, because I say it all the time, just because my business is conflict resolution systems and I do conflict work, I'm in conflict all day, every day.
Yeah.
So please, some of my closest friends and people in my life will say, do you know what you do for a living? Because you're nasty, right? Because we're human first.
Yeah.
So I think it's permission to be human, permission to know that every moment is a new moment. You might not get it right now, but it's okay. And if you hold on to that and give yourself some grace and permission to be human, peace comes from that.
Yeah.
A lot of peace comes from that. And the other part of peace that comes from me with conflict is it's this beautiful part. And I don't know if it's come because I'm now 47 and I'm going to be 48 in October. And my 40s have been glorious years of finding me. No is a complete sentence.
Yeah. I think it's definitely something that we have to learn. I know it's something that I had to learn, just to learn to say like, no, because I thought I was able to, all right, I'm going to figure this out. I'm going to find a way to put you in my schedule. You got to know where your bandwidth is at, and just say like, no, I can't do this one. Like,
yes.
And I think everybody has to be okay with just checking out at certain points.
Yeah. And I think the last part with that is too, as we're talking about this, being okay with people not liking you. It's okay. I don't like you.
Yeah.
It's okay. People are not going to like you. You're going to make decisions that are going to make people uncomfortable, and that's okay. And that's where peace comes from, where knowing yourself so well that I put my head on my pillow at night and I go to bed. I'm good.
Yeah.
I'm good. As long as I'm walking through this world, showing up the best I can every day. And that doesn't mean I don't make mistakes. It doesn't mean that I don't offend people and have to backtrack and redo it. But I know that in everything, I'll be there to listen and try and make it right. And I'll do the best I can with what I can. But at the end of the day, I'm really centered in myself to know that I'm okay.
Yeah. I've noticed that our society really operates on like a meritocracy. And I wonder to what extent on both ends, for people who feel like they're at where they need to be, and for people who feel like they're not where they need to be. Those who often feel like they're not where they need to be are often not giving themselves the credit for just still showing up. And then there are those who give themselves a lot of credit for showing up. And I guess maybe talk about how that weird conflict exists, where I think there are some people that think they're better than others or think they're worse than others. And how do people in both of those positions find a balance? How are they able to pretty much humble themselves and find a balance? As much as you think you're up in life or down in life, like there's going to be something that's going to ultimately humble you.
So when you say things like that, the immediate thing that comes to my mind is ego, right? So it's being led by this ego, which is this sense of warped self. So both aspects of what you just described is one being led by their ego. I'm great or I'm not good enough. And ego comes from a lot of different places. For me, looking at ego and not understanding ego and how I'm being led by that makes individuals make some of the worst decisions in their life. Because if they have this ego that I am the best at everything, I'm wonderful, you're separated from people because you're elevated in a way that you have a warped sense of reality. I'm never the smartest person in the room, ever. I never have all the answers. We walk in, we meet people where they are, right? So if I'm there and I'm so high up, I miss out on this. I miss out on not knowing and things like that. And maybe I could even be better, but I'm so in my own head because I'm great and I'm here and I have to go that I miss so much. On the flip side with that, I see ego keep so many of my clients and so many of my individuals from getting to their greatness because ego is telling them they're not good enough. Because you have the two ends of that, where I think so many people talk about ego as the lift booster. I look at ego a lot of the times as holding people back because of so many different things, but it's all these other voices in our head on who I'm supposed to be, who I should be, where I need to be going. And very rarely do people stop to come to themselves, to sit in silence and say, what do I want? And if I failed, what would failure look like? And that's okay. And if I succeeded, what would success look like? So it's those two very different parts of being so, you think you're so in tune with yourself, but you're actually so separated from yourself. Because when the ego is driving you, I find that's when you get into the most conflict.
That is a really interesting perspective. And it's so interesting how those things can hide right behind, whether that's, being self-deprecating or whatever way that it can hide itself. Like, because obviously the most obvious form are people who are really out there narcissistic, but there's other ways that it hides that we're not aware of.
Yeah. And it just comes up in the most random of times too, and just the way it shows up. And and today more than ever, you see it because we have social media. We have devices telling us we're good or we're not all day, every day. It's just a constant reminder of who we should be, that we've become so far detached of who we actually are.
Social media, the bane of our, of our existence. So why do you think conflict, whether in schools, families, or politics, is often so misunderstood? Like, what's really at the heart of most conflicts you've helped resolve? And I know you kind of touched on it just now.
So we spoke about ego a little bit, but for me, in all of the areas that you just mentioned, is fear. Fear. And fear you can take, you could take it in a lot of different aspects, But when I look at fear from so many different ways. The ego is involved in that, but it's the fear of the unknown. It's the fear of losing control. It's the fear of just wanting that control. Fear is the number one thing that I see come up time and time again. And for most of us, we don't acknowledge fear. We acknowledge anger. We acknowledge sadness. We acknowledge mistrust. We acknowledge abuse. We acknowledge all of that. But it's in that, well, what happens if I control my life? And the other part of that is the fear of confronting conflict, having to actually do the hard work. So, when I talk about the different stages, and we talk about there's attacking, evading, informing, opening, uniting. Those are the 5 different ways individuals deal with conflict. There's the attackers, either the aggressive attackers or the passive aggressive attackers. There's the evaders. And then when I train people, I want you to live in the IOU. Inform, open, and unite. And we'll talk about that in a second. But most of us who have never been trained live in the A and the E. And what's so interesting is so many people say, I'm the evader, I'm not the attacker. And I'm like, bullshit. Everybody's a little bit of everything. Yeah. Please don't tell me there's not a human being in your life that you haven't attacked, either aggressively or passive aggressively. And what happens is, if I'm an attacker, aggressively, passive aggressively, or I'm an evader, and now you're asking me to be an informer, open, and uniter, what?
Yeah.
And if you look at politics, right? There's that control. And we go way back. I don't talk about politics, but when we look at it, it's that control. Who can I control? How can I control them? And I can't lose control. And then you put the ego on top of that. Forget about it. It's a recipe for destruction. But in education, in all of these different things that you're talking about people who want a sense of control. So with control comes fear and ego. And the fear of, I'm going to make people fear a certain thing, or I'm so afraid to be uncovered here that I got to keep doing what I'm doing.
That's really interesting, because I remember one of the first years after the Emancipation Proclamation went out and the amendment was passed for slavery to be ended, the fear that went across predominantly white America of like, okay, what happens to us now after we've been like enslaving these people for 200-300 years? So that's just really interesting to think about. Yeah.
And it's fear of all of it. It's fear of, because, you know, the most beautiful part about what I've been doing for all these years is talking to people. Really, that's what I do.
Yeah.
I have a conversation. It's what you're doing now. It's why podcasts have become so overwhelmingly popular, because we get to talk and listen to different voices, to different opinions. And do I agree with everything? No. But it gives me an opportunity to listen to something I might not know about. So you're right. Like when all these different things happen and all the social unrest that goes on, if you truly listen to what people are saying, it's a fear of giving up a sense of control that they don't even have anyway. It's not real, but they'll do everything in their power to pretend it is, to keep that the way it needs to be.
Wow, that's interesting. Now, I know you've helped students and adults alike navigate anger, bullying, and misunderstanding. What's the difference between solving a conflict and truly healing from it?
Great question. So it goes back to what I said earlier. And this is that when you solve a conflict, right, you can solve any conflicts you want, truly. I mean, some conflicts there is no resolution to. So I talk to people about that all the time. Some conflicts there is no resolution, you know, but you can solve it. You can figure out whatever's going to happen, however it's going to be, whatever the conflict is. And there's a type of solution that comes, whether that solution includes a resolution piece to it or I need to walk away. The true healing comes from you when what you've done to me or what you think about me no longer impacts me on my day-to-day. When I can separate myself and say, I have done the work and there's nothing else I can do here but move on. So what I often see when I'm doing this work a lot, and when people come to me, whether I'm working with private clients or I'm training full programs, everybody wants the answer. Everybody wants the answer, right? And self-help books are the #1 books ever. And what do we do with self-help books? We go to the back to see, like, where's the bulleted points? So I actually have to read this to figure it out. And the truth is, yeah, you have to go through it. You have to go through it. So a solution comes when the problem happens, you figure out some quick steps. I can help you get through it, or you can help yourself get through it, and it's there. But that problem's going to come back up again if you didn't figure out the why. Why did it happen in the first place? And so interesting is that when we're doing this work, myself included, we all come back to the same conflicts. Look at your life. Look at the people that are there. Listen to your voices that speak to you in your own head, your inner conflict, your inner dialogue. If it keeps repeating the same stories, it's not the people. It's you.
Welcome to week 16 of 52 Choices, where small habits lead to lasting change. This week's choice is to commit to 3 strength workouts per week. Why? Because strength training isn't just about aesthetics. It's one of the most powerful tools for long-term health. Research published in the British Journal of Sports Medicine shows that just 30 to 60 minutes of resistance training weekly is linked to a 10 to 20% lower risk of early death, cardiovascular disease, and cancer. And here's more. A 2022 study in diabetes care found that resistance training improves insulin sensitivity, helping regulate blood sugar even without weight loss. That means fewer crashes, better energy, and more metabolic control. Not to mention, it builds bone density, boosts mood, and keeps your metabolism active as you age. This week, make the choice to lift something heavy. Your body and your future will thank you for it. Yeah. And I always say that, like, when you see someone who, I don't know, let's say they've been interacting with the same 5 or 10 people and they're all having a similar experience. Might be you.
Yeah. And don't get me wrong, people are in terrible conflicts. Like I did I did a video years ago. A friend of mine was doing a project called the Everyday People Project. And we were talking about when I was young, I was in an abusive relationship. And I was young and I was naive and he was young and naive. And one of the things I said, and I don't take this away from anyone because I deal with people who are in abusive relationships and helping them get out of it. But in my particular situation that I was in, I was part of the problem because I never asked him to stop. So it's not that I deserved it. It's not that it was okay what he did to me. It was not. But at some point in that journey, I had to take control for me to walk away. I had to do that or ask for help. And it's something that I talk to young people about all the time and women and men alike, because men aren't free from being abused either, even though people think they are. It's just having that wherewithin. If you really want to heal, you have to ask for help and you have to do the work and you have to be really uncomfortable.
Yeah. And as you were saying before, like a lot of us are afraid to sit in silence, right? Because it's like that noise or whatever is going on really helps to drown out the reality of what's going on in your life. But yeah, we all have to at some point come to dealing with that silence that we all
absolutely hate. And listen, that noise came up a lot for me. It was food, it was alcohol, it was a lot of fun things in my life. Like I said, I was 475 pounds. I like to party, I like to do things. That noise comes up, and for the generation today, the noise comes up there's always going to be noise. So, that quick solution, and we're a society now that wants things quick. We don't want to wait for things. We don't want to work for things. We want quick solutions. So, when you go back to you say to me, what's the difference between the solution and true healing? The solutions are quick. Healing takes time.
Now, I guess we'll go further into this. How do you help people who've been hurt so deeply that they no longer believe resolution is possible?
Well, first I let them sit in that, accept that. That's probably true. If you are hurt and cut so deeply because of abuse, because of trauma, because of something, the truth is there is no resolution. Someone who cuts you that deeply in life, what are you going to do? Say, I'm sorry? What are you going to do to change that you changed my life? I'm currently back in therapy. I'm doing a very intense therapy called CPT therapy. And it's specifically for PTSD because I've been diagnosed with PTSD from my childhood traumas because I've been through a lot.
Right.
And, in part of that trauma, my uncle was a very big part of that trauma in my life. And, truthfully, I talk to people about it all the time. Was it ever resolved? No. Did he ever atone for it? No, not in a way I needed to. Was he a horrible person? No. He's a man who was flawed and made mistakes, and I was the brunt, and not just me, others, but I was the brunt of some of the mistakes. I took the brunt of that a lot. So was that ever resolved for me? No. So I let people sit with it and then talk to them about how much power do you want to continue to give him? So it goes back to that power, right? And that fear of if I let go of this, because that defined me for so many years. I was angry for so many years. I was sad for so many years. And it, at some point in doing this work and pulling yourself back and looking at it all to say, there are some conflicts that there is no resolution to. So that's how I work with people with that, to either help guide them to better therapy, to work through it, or to some self-help for themselves. But the first part of that is helping them acknowledge that there are some people, and if we're talking about a conflict that's person-driven, right? So for instance, with my uncle, a lot of times it's parents or people in our lives or whoever it is. There has to come a point in our time, specifically with this question, where you have to accept the people for who they are in your life and not who you wanted them to be or needed them to be. Because you're not getting that person. That person doesn't exist. And we live so much of our life trying to prove ourselves to these people, or maybe if I just did this, they'd be better, or, trying to be seen by everybody but ourselves. So when you go back, a lot of the times I talk in my work about Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And Maslow's hierarchy of needs is that baseline safety and security and that foundation. And then you get to the love and belonging and all of that. So I talk to people in specific things like this, where I say, well, what's your foundation? Do we have to rebuild your foundation for you because someone made you feel unsafe? Someone rocked your foundation. They're not going to fix it. They're not the Mason guys. You got a crack in your foundation. How do we seal it up?
Now, I know your work is about helping others manage their emotions and communicate better. But how do you process your own anger, stress, or disappointment when it inevitably shows up?
That's been a lifelong work for me. It's been a lifelong work for me. I am someone who is extremely emotional, and not emotional crying, even though I've done that a lot more in the past few years than I ever have. When I say emotional, that's that big Italian emotion that comes out of cursing and anger and all the things. So I've done a tremendous amount of work in meditation and breath work. So for me, when COVID happens, COVID was the best and worst thing that happens in my life. Because for obvious reasons, worst, it was a difficult time for all of us, out of work, all of those things, but it gave me time that I didn't have before. And during that time, I became a positive psychology coach. I got trained in positive psychology. I did a 9-month program. And what I learned in that course was how our brain works, which led me to the therapy that I'm doing now, and understanding how our prefrontal cortex and our amygdala work. And our amygdala, when we're in a threat, when something is threatening to us, your amygdala automatically goes on. Your amygdala is sending signals all day long that you're under attack or you need to do things. It is your reactive part of your brain. So when you have PTSD or you have trauma or you have conflict, you're constantly reacting. And your prefrontal cortex, which is your reasoning part of your brain, goes offline. It shuts down. So for me, the work that I did in positive psychology, which introduced me a little bit to neuroscience, taught me about my brain. Stefan, I was in therapy for years. I've been doing conflict resolution work for years, mediation work for years. Nobody ever had a conversation with me about my brain and how this part of our brain works if you know how to work it. And the studies have shown that if you do 90 seconds of intentional breathing 3 times a day, you reset your brain. So the first thing that happens when I get up in the morning, my alarm clock goes off, 90 seconds of intentional breathing immediately. And I'm not talking about prayer and meditation and yoga. Do I do prayer? Yes, I'm very religious. I'm very spiritual. I do that. This has nothing to do with this. This is physically how your body works. We do not understand how our brain works for us, and we're not paying attention to our brain. And because of that, your emotions get the better of you, because your amygdala is going to fight for you. It's what it was meant to do. It's necessary. But the difference is your amygdala doesn't know the difference between a lion attacking you or an email that just came in. It reacts the same way. It sends the same signal. The only way to get it back online is 90 seconds of intentional breathing. So for me, that has been the most impactful in dealing with my emotions. I do it 3 times a day, first thing in the morning. I do it in the middle of the day, and I'll do it right before I go to bed at night. I do some other techniques like havening and tapping, which are techniques that are used to deal with meridians in your body and your central nervous system. Because right now, especially post-COVID, and especially with all the cell phone use and social media and things that are out there, our nervous system is on fire. And it's constantly throwing off signals that we're under attack when we're not. So that has been the most pivotal turning point for me in the work I've done. It's been the most impactful. It's been the most helpful for myself. And I see a difference when I don't do it.
Yeah.
Because if I'm not doing it 3 times a day, and the people around me see a difference. Yeah. So that truly for me, that's the most impact.
Now, I know that in your career, who's the one person that helped you see a better version of yourself, and how did they do that?
So in all honesty, I'm going to have to say my students, a variety of my students. So I don't necessarily think there's one person that did that for me. There's not one particular person. But for me, looking at a better version of myself, my kids have always tested me. Always tested me. And what do I mean by that? When I was working and running programs, when I was a high school teacher running programs, I used to run all of the theater programs and the government programs, the conflict resolution programs. And I'll never forget one day I heard one of my black students, we were all together, and I heard one of my black students say, no, that's for Steiny's kids. That office is for the white kids. And this was like the beginning of my career. And I turned around, I'm like, what did you just say? And she's like, no, Stein, we love you. We know you're down with us. Like, I go, no, hard stop. Yeah. Hard stop right there. What did you just say? And she said, no, we just know that your kids. I go, no, I need to know what you perceive this office to be. Please, I need to know. And all of my kids of a plethora of colors and backgrounds and religions and all the things started to tell me that they felt that the office was white centric for the white Italian kids. And I went, not like that ends today. And I had a meeting with all of my kids, brought all my kids in, and we sat and we spoke, and I had everybody share their feelings and everybody talk and everybody say, and then turn to my kids of color and different backgrounds and say, how can I help? What do I need to do to improve the space to ensure that it is welcoming for all? So it's instances like that changed me. It's instances like specifically Anthony, one of my former students, when he was in his career and doing things. One day he turns around to me and he was like, when are you going to go out and do things on your own? And I was like, wait, what? He's like, you're better. You can do more. You're better with this. Challenging me with certain things. And when I make mistakes, I'm blessed that I'm friends with so many of my former students. Like, they are my family, they are my people, and they challenge me. So I think having people who can be that mirror to hold yourself up and hold you accountable makes me always a better version of myself. Because I'm not an easy person to talk to all the time, even though I come off as this sweet, adorable person.
You mentioned one of your students, Anthony. Can we say which Anthony that is, or do we want to keep that?
No, we can. It's Anthony Ramos, but who's amazing and doing amazing things out. But I always say Anthony is the version of like all of the kids. So when we talk about that, like, his story is so powerful, of where his story comes from, and he's just one of thousands of my kids that are out there. He just happens to be in the public eye, right? So when you look at things like that and always rising to the occasion, when you have people like that out in the world, and you have people like him and so many of my other kids who are out in the world doing these unbelievable things, it forces you to take a look within to say, wait a minute, I was a little part of their journey. So how do I step up my game? How do I make sure I'm still opening up these doors and helping people see themselves in a way they couldn't see themselves before, so they could continue opening doors for other people? Because that's the whole beauty of this. Like, if we're not rising together, why are we rising at all?
Yeah. Wow. Now, I know you spent your life deeply connected to Brooklyn and its diverse communities. How has your neighborhood shaped your approach to empathy and conflict resolution?
That's an awesome question. So you said it earlier, I was born in Bensonhurst, Brooklyn, and my neighborhood 1000% prepared me for this conversation, this work, this life's journey. So growing up in Bensonhurst, I'm half Italian, half Russian. My dad was the Russian Jewish part before he converted. My mom's the Italian American, but my neighborhood was very much, Italian American. And I love my culture. Believe me, I love being Italian. I love everything about it. But what I didn't love growing up was not feeling like I fit in anywhere. Because, truth be told, most of the people that I grew up around were, prejudiced and racist. And it's just the way people grew up. And it's, I don't think there's any one person to blame or how it was. It's just the way society has been and continues to be today. I mean, it's not like I feel like we haven't come so far. I felt like we did, but we didn't. And for me specifically, when I was in junior high school, the one specific thing that always comes to mind is there was a young black man who came into my neighborhood who was killed. His name was Yusuf Hawkins. And Yusuf Hawkins was shot and killed not far from my house by men that I knew and grew up with. You know, my brothers grew up with these men. They were older than me.
Yeah.
I was in junior high school. They were older. And I remember standing in my space. I was 12 at the time. And I was like, who are these people? I'm not like that. My mother's not like that. And I just heard these people who I grew up with, who I never really liked, to be quite honest with you. They bullied me. They were not nice to me. I knew that they just weren't innately nice people. And I'm not talking everybody in the neighborhood because I love my neighborhood. I'm talking about there was a core group that I never connected with. And then when I started seeing the marches and people throwing watermelons and just doing the things that they were doing, and my mom sat us down. And you know my mom well. Can't use some of the language that she would have used on us. But basically, in no uncertain terms, said if she saw any of us out, I mean, I was too young, so I wouldn't have been. But talking to my brothers, that is not how we treat people. Like, my mother is just an amazing human. That was unacceptable. It was unacceptable behavior. But it was acceptable, you know, in my neighborhood. So for me, looking at that, I knew innately at that moment that I was different. I didn't want to do this. And it was then that I shifted and started to get involved with other, I didn't even realize I was doing it consciously, but went back into school and just made sure that I started making friends with people of all different cultural backgrounds, of all walks of life. Started to get involved in student government in school. And then when I went into high school, my high school had the biggest race riots in Brooklyn at the time. Biggest race riots. And again, it was blacks versus Italians, and it was just a lot going on. And they brought in programs to talk to us about tolerance and understand everybody. And I was thriving on it. And I just loved watching people come together. People who hated each other, who didn't understand one another, who couldn't have conversations, walk out of rooms crying and hugging one another and saying, I didn't realize. I didn't know. So for me, Bensonhurst, I love it.
Yeah.
I thank it. I would not have wanted to have been born any other place. Brooklyn is who I am to my core. Italian American is who I am to my core. I love it. I love my culture. I love the people I grew up with. And I love that there was room for all of us to grow and change and see that we shouldn't be led by fear.
Yeah. Now, as you talk about Brooklyn, I know that it can be loud, fast, opinionated. What's something that this city has taught you about patience and presence?
Well, if you don't have patience in New York. Yeah, so patience. So I think one of the things that, you know, just growing up here has taught me having this is that it's a struggle growing up in New York. You know, everything is hard and everything is loud. Everything is constantly on the move. And it's so funny that you asked this because I recently had this conversation with someone because now I live in Jersey, but in talking, because everything's so slow there and quiet. And I said, you know, I understand why people mistake New Yorkers for being angry. We're not angry. We're just trying to get shit done because we're constantly being tasked to do things and move and get to where we have to be because nothing comes easy for us. Nothing, not parking spaces, not apartments, not neighbors, not everything is this hustle and bustle and struggle. But on the flip side, when you look at it, damn, it's an amazing place to grow up. Like, the noise, the pulse, there's a pulse of New York City and each borough has its own pulse. Like, I'm doing a lot of work in the Bronx now. What a freaking amazing pulse the Bronx has, right? Queens has every borough has this pulse to it. And there's this heartbeat that goes on. And I really feel that New York as a whole, all 5 boroughs, right, is like a heartbeat to the country. It shows people how to, If you can survive in New York, you can survive anywhere. It just shows you how to survive in some of the toughest conditions. And patience, it's a virtue, man. You have to have patience living here, just with people, the melting pot, the different cultures, the different languages spoken, just the differences. If you don't have patience with that, you're going to find yourself in a lot of trouble.
Oh, yeah. Can't tell you the amount of times I personally haven't really audibly cursed anybody out. I have my windows up or down, and, New York is a lot. So you've received, if your work could leave one lasting impact on the next generation of students and leaders, what would you want it?
Other people matter. It's not all about you. Other people matter. We can't do this life alone. We're not meant to do this life alone. And think about somebody other than yourself. Let people in. And listen to people's stories and listen. Don't listen to respond. Don't listen with judgment. Just meet people where they are and enjoy the journey. Trust the process.
Yeah, definitely. And I know you've received some powerful community awards, but what's one moment in your work that meant far more to you than public recognition ever could?
So I'm going to go back to my kids again. When I say my kids, I say my students. For me, watching my kids evolve. So, we mentioned Anthony earlier. It's not only him. I have other students who will remain nameless because of the nature of their lives. But one student particular that always comes to mind is a student who was dealing with addiction pretty badly. And watching the father and human he is today is one of the most beautiful things I've ever witnessed. Watching my other students who are teachers and educators, and one of my students, Christine, who helps me with my podcast now, but she's in charge of civics education at her school, and watching the accolades and what she's doing for kids there is exponential. Her sister, who's in other countries developing special education programs. Other students who are assistant principals, doctors, researchers, parents. Some of my kids who were teen moms and having kids in high school and people telling them they'd never make it, walking across stage as doctorates and nurses and lawyers. It's just, for me, no award, no recognition is better than watching someone else stand in their greatness because someone else was able to turn on the light for them. That's the best reward anybody could ever get.
Now, for someone listening right now who feels stuck in a conflict, whether it's a loved one, a coworker, or themselves, what's one small but powerful first step they can take toward resolution?
Okay. So the first thing is stop and breathe for 90 seconds. I know that sounds so like, Sarah, really? First thing, stop. Take a deep breath in through your nose. Hold that breath for 3 seconds. And then slowly exhale through your mouth. And do that for 90 seconds. And then after you're done doing that for 90 seconds and you reset your nervous system, write a letter. Not typing it on notes. Get away from your computers. Get away from your cell phones. Get an old school piece of paper and an old school pen and start to write everything out that's going on with the conflict. Get it out of your brain, because the stories you tell yourself and what actually is going on are two very different things. So before you go to resolve it and have it, if it feels so heavy, write it all out. As crazy as it sounds, write it all out. And then read it over out loud. Read it out loud to yourself, because when you read it in your head, all the voices are going to come in. When you read it out loud to yourself, all of a sudden you're like, wait a minute, what? You start to hear it differently. So after you do that, I say do one of two things. Either rip it up and burn it, or sit with it and then start to pull apart and say, okay, out of this, what needs aren't being met here? Not what I want. Nobody cares about what you want, unfortunately. I tell people that all the time. I want a lot, believe me. But what needs aren't being met? Is it respect? Is it safety? Is it security? What is going on that is impacting you that you can't move forward? Once you identify the needs, then you will know how to fix it. Because if I know, oh wow, you're actually making me feel unsafe. Wow, you actually totally disrespected me. Not, I want you to do this tonight. So it's, for me, just to reiterate, 90 seconds of breathing, write it all out, and then read it out loud to yourself. And then once you do that, identify those needs and see if you actually have to talk to somebody, or maybe it's changes you have to make. But before you start going at somebody else to tell them how they need to change to make your life better, starts here.
Yeah.
Starts here, no matter what. Even if you're right.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter. Even if you're right, it starts here.
Now, lastly, what's one belief about conflict or anger that you wish more people would unlearn?
That anger is not okay. I think, we live, and that everything has to be resolved. I think we live in a society now where there's so much anger, but nobody's supposed to be angry.
Yeah.
I don't understand that. Anger is very normal. It's a natural emotion that we have. And specifically for young people, to let young people know it's okay to be angry. So I think the one thing to unlearn is to stop telling people to calm down and relax, to say it's okay to be angry. I understand. So to sit with the fact that anger is okay, what we do with that anger may not be okay. But the emotion itself is okay. Let's feel it. Let's live it. Let's push through it, because I want them to unlearn that there's quick resolves and we don't have to feel uncomfortable. It's okay to feel uncomfortable. I wish people would unlearn that we're not meant to feel comfortable all the time.
And I think that's the usual pitfall we find ourselves in, that we always want something to be just easy, nice and smooth. One thing I'm hearing a lot now is people saying they want the soft life, right? And I get what they're saying. It's like a material thing. I don't think they're saying that they know that it's going to be minus conflict and issues. Yeah. But for some people, I think they mean that too. But yeah, I think it's a very unrealistic expectation to think that everything is going to be smooth, because it's not. I don't think it's ever going to be the case, right? I think for most part, we all have different ways of processing information and different ways in which we see the world. Mm-hmm. And I think there's always going to be some conflict. And I think the end goal really is, okay, we have a conflict when it comes to how we see things. How can we now get to a point where we're actually working together?
I love, and I always say, how do we get to that middle point, that middle grounds? And then the other part of it is, so many people, when they're walking through conflicts, whether it's with somebody else or with themselves, is why me? When I walk into conflict, I'm like, why not me?
Yeah.
What do we have to learn here? Because there's something to learn in all of it. The good, the bad, the ugly, the indifferent. It brings us to that new level of who we are. I wouldn't change any of it. And I've been through some shit. And I wouldn't change any of it. And a lot of it has been hard. Mm-hmm. But every part of it brought me to the next part. And I know I'm not done yet. I know I'm still walking through conflict every day. Yeah. And it's going to happen. And it's just stopping and saying, okay, what do I have to learn about myself, about others? And how do I use this to then help other people understand that they matter too? Because everything is part of this great big process that we want to be so isolated. We have to work together to understand that.
Now, Sarah, I know that there are going to be people who want to follow you and follow your work. Where can we find you? And on social media, website, sure. Where can we?
So I can't even believe I say this, but yes, I am on social media and all those things. So on Instagram, it's simply my name, Sara Steinweiss on Instagram. Facebook, the same thing. And then my business is called Conflict Resolution Systems. So my website is conflictresolutionsystems.com. But if you Google me, you can find me anywhere.
Well, Sarah, thank you so much for sharing your time and your work with us. And thank you for just reconnecting as well.
Yeah.
This was great. I definitely have to get out there at some point, meet with Mom.
Yes, absolutely. So, thank you for doing this. The work you're doing with this podcast is pretty awesome. The different topics you're bringing in are so necessary. I know we spoke about this years ago, that this was a passion of yours. So being here, and it's an honor to be here with you. It really is.
Well, guys, thank you again for tuning in. Just remember that choosing health is choosing you. It's choosing possibility, power, and purpose. And for many of you who are watching and liking the videos and sharing the videos, still 98% of you are not subscribed. So please hit that subscribe button and also hit the notification bell so that you can be notified anytime that we drop an episode. Again, just remember to choose health, choose you, and we're looking forward to seeing you guys next week. Enjoy and peace.